Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this roundtable on advancing indigenous rights in Chittagong Hill Tracts, progress, challenges, and political commitments. Today's discussion is convened with the support of Nordic embassies in Bangladesh, the Center for Policy Dialogue, and the Daily Star. And we are meeting here at the CPD's office this morning. The Chittagong Hill Tracts occupy a unique place in Bangladesh history and political landscape. Home to diverse indigenous communities, the region has long faced complex challenges related to land administration, governance arrangements, security concern, and social inclusion. The 1997 Chittagong Hill Tracts Peace Accord represented a landmark commitment to address these issues through dialogue, decentralization, and recognition of rights. Nearly 3 decades later, progress has been uneven. While there have been important institutional and legal developments, several core provisions of Accord remain partially implemented or stalled. This gap between commitment and practice continues to shape trust, social cohesion, and perception of justice in the region. Today's discussion is not about revisiting past grievance or assessing responsibility. It is about where we stand now and what can realistically be advanced at this moment. This conversation is taking place at an important juncture as Bangladesh navigates a broader democratic transition. Issues such as indigenous rights, land governance, women safety, and effective local institutions are central to democratic accountability and inclusive development and cannot be treated as peripheral concern. The purpose of today's roundtable is to foster a constructive, respectful exchange to identify practical priorities for renewed progress on the peace accord and encourage forward-looking political engagement, particularly in a pre-electoral context. The guiding question invites us to draw our lessons from comparative experiences, including Nordic approaches, while remaining grounded in Bangladesh's reality. They also challenge us to reflect on how recognition of indigenous peoples can strengthen national unity and democratic governance. As a moderator, my role is to keep this conversation focused, balanced, and solution-oriented. I encourage everyone to speak candidly, listen carefully, and engage with a spirit of shared responsibility. Let us begin with a short introduction session. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Tanzim Ferdos. I'll be today's moderator, and I work for the Daily Star as the in charge of NGOs and foreign missions. I'm requesting from my left to go forward.
Good morning to you all. My name is Pallab Chakma. I work for Kapeng Foundation. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Asan. I'm from the Danish Embassy.
From the Danish Embassy.
Greetings everyone, this is Ayan Ahmed working on behalf of the Daily Star. Thank you.
Greetings and good morning, everyone. I'm Satish Chakma. I work as International Affairs Secretary of Bangladesh Indigenous Youth Forum. So this is the youth wing of Bangladesh Indigenous Peoples Forum. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Hussain. I'm a lawyer in the Supreme Court. I'm here on behalf of BLAST, the Bangladesh Legal Aid and Services Tract.
Good morning. My name is Håkon Gulbrandsen, and I'm the Norwegian Ambassador. And thank you very much for the invitation.
Christian Brixmøller, Ambassador of Denmark. Good morning.
Good morning. I am Supradeep here. I don't know why I am here. Thank you anyway.
You are very well represented. Good morning. My name is Fahmida Khatun. I am the Executive Director of the Center for Policy Dialogue.
Good morning, I'm Aminam Hossain, an academic as well as a researcher. I've been working on CHT for quite a long time. And I must congratulate CPD for taking this initiative because It is the leading think tank of Bangladesh, and for them to take this initiative on the indigenous people, I think speaks a lot of the changing or dynamics in Bangladesh politics. There was a time we couldn't even talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a person joined online. Will you please introduce yourself?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Yeah. My name is Lola Garcia-Lix, and I'm from the International Work Group for Indigenous Affairs, IWGIA, an international NGO working on the promotion and the protection of indigenous people's rights. Good morning to everyone.
Thank you very much for joining us online. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have invited several political leaders from different parties. Unfortunately, they couldn't join, or some will join due to the election campaign. They were busy with their election campaign, but we'll be conveying this message to our news report and the special supplements that we'll be producing later. Now I'd like to request Dr. Fahmida Khatun, Executive Director, Center for Policy Dialogue, and she's the chair of today's session, to deliver her welcome remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning once again. On behalf of the Center for Policy Dialogue, I would like to extend my warm welcome to you all to this very important roundtable on advancing indigenous rights in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, progress, challenges, and political commitments. We are very happy to collaborate with a number of partners, long-standing partners of us, the Embassy of Denmark, Embassy of Sweden, Embassy of Norwegian Embassy in Dhaka, and the Daily Star. Thank you once again for collaborating with us on this very important issue. This discussion is timely because the Chittagong Hill Tracts remain a critical test of whether Bangladesh can translate policy commitments into lived rights, dignity, and over the years there have been important developments. Institutions have been established and some legal steps have been taken. Yet, concerns raised by communities and stakeholders suggest that a significant gap remains. So these gaps are most visible in three connected areas: land and resource governance, effective local administration, and confidence in security and justice systems. From a policy perspective, if we want meaningful progress on indigenous rights within a realistic time frame, we need sequenced priorities. We need actions that produce visible results and rebuild confidence. First, land and resource rights must be treated as the most urgent priority. For indigenous communities in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, land is not only an economic asset, it is linked to identity, livelihood, and cultural survival. When land governance is weak and disputes remain unresolved, it fuels insecurity, displacement, and mistrust. Therefore, the highest immediate priority should be a credible, functional, and transparent mechanism for resolving land disputes and protecting land rights, supported by clear procedures and regular public reporting. The second issue is strengthening local and participatory governance. This is essential to rights in practice. Rights are not realized only through national commitments. They are realized through effective local institutions. Progress requires a time-bound plan so that administrative and budgetary responsibilities can be exercised effectively at the regional and district levels, alongside stronger accountability mechanisms. Third, confidence building around security and justice is necessary to protect rights and civic space. Indigenous rights cannot advance if communities do not feel safe, if institutions are not trusted, or if grievances cannot be addressed fairly. What is needed now is a practical approach that strengthens civilian governance and improves access to justice so that security is experienced as protection and the rule of law. Alongside these priorities, I would like to underline two cross-cutting issues. First, rehabilitation of displaced population should move forward in parallel with land rights, protection, and dispute resolution. Otherwise, rehabilitation will remain contested and slow. Second, the protection of indigenous women and girls must be addressed as a core rights and justice issue, particularly by improving safety and access to justice in remote areas. Finally, this roundtable is also about political commitments. The most constructive outcome today would be agreement on a short list of deliverables that can be tracked publicly, quarter by quarter, not only as promises, but as a measurable actions. To conclude, if we are serious about advancing indigenous rights in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, we should prioritize credible land rights protection and dispute resolution, empowered participatory local governance, and confidence building for security and justice, with parallel attention to rehabilitation and the safety of women and girls. With this, I would like to end my short comments. Once again, welcome to CPD in joining this dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khatun. Now I'd like to request His Excellency Mr. Christian Briggs Moller, Ambassador to Embassy of Denmark in Bangladesh, to deliver his welcome remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Honorable Advisor, Dr. Famida, dear other participants, good morning. And on behalf of the Nordic embassies in Bangladesh, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, I would like to welcome all of you to this important discussion today. We have deep admiration and respect for each one of you, sincerely working for the rights of indigenous peoples, some of you even for decades, and keeping at it despite much intimidation and struggle. Thank you deeply for that, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning, including also Lola from IWGIA joining online. I have three brief points I would like to make. The first one, why the rights of indigenous peoples, including in Bangladesh, is of high importance to us in the Nordics, including for Denmark. Second, why is this important to Bangladesh today? And third, the question we are basically asking today, what can be done for indigenous peoples in Bangladesh, and in particular the development of Chittagong Hills Tracts. So my first point, why the rights of indigenous peoples in Bangladesh is an issue of high importance to us in the Nordics and for Denmark. We have much in common with Bangladesh as nations rich in indigenous communities. And it is a high priority issue in our foreign policy, because indigenous people's rights are human rights, and human rights are universal. Our own history includes mistakes and injustice, periods of denial and assimilation, but we have learned the hard way the importance of recognition, dialogue, and the establishment of indigenous institutions in making progress. Denmark, together with Greenland, aims to be a strong voice in the defense and realization of the rights of indigenous peoples. It's a shared priority for Denmark and Greenland, building on decades of engagement. At the UN, we work closely with the UN Permanent Forum for Indigenous Peoples, as well as the UN Expert Mechanism. where governments and representatives for indigenous peoples all over the world work together to solve the multiple challenges faced by indigenous peoples. Denmark is funding the International Work Group for Indigenous Affairs, IWGIA, and hosting IWGIA in Copenhagen to continue promoting, protecting, and defining the rights of indigenous peoples. Denmark has continued to submit recommendations to Bangladesh in UPR on the full implementation of the CHT Peace Accord, latest in 2023, and Bangladesh accepted this recommendation. My second point, why is this important to Bangladesh today? At this crucial stage in the history of Bangladesh, we feel it is very timely to discuss this issue, because we hope that the rights of indigenous peoples become a focus, irrespective of who forms the next government. We recognize that the historical and political context of the Nordic nations and Bangladesh are very different. Yet, we believe that our experiences can serve as a source of inspiration, because it shows that recognition, dialogue, and establishment of indigenous institutions are essential components of inclusive nation building. We regret the limited focus on indigenous peoples in the reform work initiated by the interim government of Bangladesh, because without the recognition of indigenous peoples, the democratic transition in Bangladesh will, in our view, be incomplete. And my third and final point, the question we are asking today, what can be done for the development of Chittagong Hill Tracts? We see the Chittagong Hill Tracts as a region of significant and sustainable economic potential, including in, for example, ecotourism and agricultural exports. Bangladesh would benefit from transparently and inclusively exploring these opportunities in genuine partnership with the indigenous communities. We look forward to hearing from the speakers today on positive steps which Bangladesh might take to protect the region while simultaneously opening it up for economic activity with due respect to the rights of indigenous peoples. As Bangladesh enters a new period in its history, it has a unique opportunity to chart its own path, one that recognizes its rich diversity and builds a future together with its indigenous peoples as integral to the nation's fabric and progress. Once again, I'm pleased to welcome you all, and I would like to thank CP for hosting the event and the Daily Star as a media partner and also moderator today. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. And I would like to give now the floor to my Norwegian colleague Håkon Gulbrandsen for his insight and perspectives.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Christian Briggs-Moller, Ambassador, Embassy of Denmark in Bangladesh. Now we'll go for a perspective sharing session, and we are inviting His Excellency Mr. Håkon Harald Gulbrandsen, Ambassador, Royal Norwegian Embassy in Dhaka. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, and Honorable Advisors, Jabir Chakma, Dr. Khatum, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my pleasure to be here today to share some perspectives about Norway and our approaches to our indigenous communities and what we have learned from that. There seems to be some disagreement in Bangladesh about the concept of indigenous people, and I would therefore like to start by briefly referring to how we and United Nations understand that term. According to the International Labour Organization, ILO, Convention number 169, and the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Communities, indigenous peoples are a group who identify themselves as indigenous people and are recognized by their community, have historical societies, maintain strong links to land and natural resources, possess distinct social, economic, and political systems, have their own language, cultural and belief, form non-dominant groups of society, and seek to preserve and pass on their way of life. Based on these criteria, it's clear that Bangladesh has indigenous peoples, both in Chittagong Tracts and the plains, just as Norway has indigenous and minority groups. However, Bangladesh and Norway are two quite different countries. We both have indigenous groups and national minorities with their own cultures, language and traditions. And the way we see and treat these people is shaped by our history and our own culture and traditions. Indigenous people everywhere tend to be small in number. And in Bangladesh, they make up less than 1% of the total population, and they do not pose any threat to the broader society. On the contrary, they often struggle simply to preserve their identity and to avoid cultural extinction. They have the right to live according to their traditions while also benefiting from the development efforts of the state. Norway's history with indigenous groups is challenging and frankly regretful. We tried for many decades to assimilate indigenous and minority groups, including the Sami people, Kvenes, Forest Finns and Romani community. These are all different groups who have lived in Norway for centuries and have their own cultures, way of life and languages. And we mistakenly believe that cultural uniformity made us stronger, and we pursued policies that attempted to erase languages, traditions and beliefs. In today's Norway, there is a widespread agreement that these kind of policies were wrong and that we are neither better nor stronger as a homogeneous group. Since we stopped excluding these groups and instead started including and listening to them, we have learned that what truly makes us a strong and rich society is diversity and respect for each other's different ways of life. Today we recognize the contribution each and every one of these groups have made to different areas such as Norwegian cultural heritage, agriculture, use of land and forestry. Here in Bangladesh you also have several different indigenous groups, your Adivasi. It's our belief that they make Bangladesh a richer country. They have not only the ways of life, culture and language, but also their solutions and their knowledge. If given the opportunity, they can share this with the rest of the Bangladeshis people. This can be the key to innovation and evolution, and it can strengthen the bonds and unite all people living in Bangladesh. The reconciliation and unification of different groups of people is something we in Norway has had positive experience with. A milestone for our democracy was finally embracing the Sami people and establishing the Sami parliament in Norway. It took years of discussion, dialogue and negotiations, but today the Sami parliament brings insights on multiple areas such as ways to utilize the land, sustainable management, as well as protect cultural heritage, something we could have lost had we not had a change of heart regarding our indigenous people. Actually, on this day, Her Royal Highness Ingrid Alexandra will visit the Sami Parliament on her first formal mission alone and as the future heir to the Norwegian crown. The founding of the Sami Parliament helps Norway fulfill our international and human rights obligations, obligation we have committed to because we believe that this is right. The UN Declaration on Human Rights states that everyone should be able to freely exercise their religion and culture as long as no harm is done to others. And in Norway, this freedom is now part of our national laws and protected through our constitution. Further, our constitution also states that Norway should facilitate so that the Sami people can ensure and develop their language, their culture, and way of life. This is a clear illustration of how valuable our indigenous people are to us and how much we believe that they have the same rights as other Norwegians to exercise their own culture rather than assimilate them and silence their voices. When you see beyond the differences and stereotypes and stop discrimination, you access so much competence you would have missed out on otherwise. More competence means better workplaces, it means better education, better health care, a stronger military, more resource in crucial fields, not mentioned more innovation. We share our story with you, a story we are not always proud of, because we hope you can learn something from our mistakes, and because we hope that you will see the same value in your indigenous peoples and national minorities as we do in ours. And we hope that our experience can be useful for Bangladesh as you consider how to protect the rights and dignity of your own indigenous people and national minorities. Together with IWGIA, the Nordic country stands ready to deepen cooperation by sharing our experience in inclusive governance, natural resource management, and community-based development. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, His Excellency. Now, we'd like to go for another sharing of perspective. I'm requesting Ms. Lola Garcia. She's the Senior Advisor of IWGA Program on Global Governance. Over to you.
Thank you. Dialogue. I'm very pleased, I'm very honored to join you to this initiative today. We meet at the moment when Bangladesh is redefining its political landscape. This moment must not once again leave indigenous peoples behind. Their rights cannot be an afterthought. They must be placed at the center of any vision for a democratic, inclusive, and peaceful Bangladesh. But let me start by presenting myself. I'm Lola Garcia Lix, Senior Advisor at the International Workgroup for Indigenous Affairs, IWGIA, an organization that for almost 60 years has stood alongside indigenous people's struggle for recognition and protection for their rights worldwide, including the peoples of the Chittagong Hill Tracts and the plains in Bangladesh. Today, in my presentation, I want to emphasize three clear messages. There is no legal ambiguity about who indigenous peoples are, and the Ambassador of Norway already referred to the issue of the definition. The second message is recognition is not optional. It is an international human rights obligation and a prerequisite for peace in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. And the third message, it has also been mentioned, there is a path forward, and the Nordics experience can serve as an inspiration. But before that, let us be clear. The struggle of indigenous peoples for recognition and protection of their rights did not begin with international recognition. It began much earlier, rooted in a history of dispossession, violence, and the denial of their most basic rights. The absence of dialogue, persistent human rights violations, and the lack of access to justice left indigenous peoples with nowhere to turn but the international arena, where they consistently have urged the international community to respond and support their demands for justice, protection, and recognition. For more than 3 decades, indigenous leaders from Bangladesh have participated in and shaped the evolution of global indigenous rights standards. They contributed to the drafting of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, to the establishment of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, and the expert mechanism on the rights of indigenous people. Mechanisms that they were established by the UN to monitor the implementation and the protection of indigenous people's rights. I will go ahead with the issue of the definition debate. The question of who is indigenous has long been one of the most persistent obstacles in Bangladesh. Much of the debate has centered on the idea that indigenous peoples must first be defined before their rights can be acknowledged. But in reality, this debate rests on a misunderstanding on how the United Nations approached this issue. And the ambassador very well said it. The truth is simple. There is no single UN definition of indigenous peoples, and this is intentional. When international standards were developed, indigenous leaders and states agreed not to adopt a rigid definition. Why? Because a fixed definition could easily be misused by governments to exclude certain groups for political reasons. And I will add, in the UN, sometimes the definitions are very difficult. We should not forget, for instance, that there is no definition of what a child is. It's very different from culture to culture. And many others, terrorism, other issues, definitions are always very difficult. And they always limit. Instead of a strict definition, the UN relies on a widely accepted working criteria, which it has been mentioned also, that reflect the lived realities of indigenous peoples around the world. And these include self-identification as indigenous, historical continuity with pre-colonial or early state societies, distinct cultures, institutions, or languages, a non-dominant position within the state, and a strong sense of collective identity as people, among others. These criteria are flexible enough to respect global diversity, yet clear enough to guide international practice. And by these criteria, the indigenous peoples of Bangladesh fully and unequivocally qualify. Their recognition within UN has never been questioned. This is why it is important to be clear. The debate in Bangladesh is political, is not legal. International law already recognizes these communities as indigenous peoples. National political debates, however complex, cannot override or diminish universal human rights norms. And this led us to the issue of the recognition. Recognition of indigenous peoples is a prerequisite for peace, not a threat to the state. Recognition is not symbolic. It is the cornerstone of the enjoyment of all rights by indigenous peoples. As the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples made clear in his report to the Human Rights Council last September, and I quote, refusal by a state to recognize indigenous peoples does not diminish the rights held by indigenous people. Recognition is therefore not a political choice. It is a legal and moral obligation under international human rights law. A fundamental principle of that law is the right of indigenous peoples to self-identify as indigenous. A state refusal to recognize them must never be used to justify ignoring, weakening, or denying their rights. Those rights exist independently of a government's willingness to acknowledge them. the UN Declaration, ILO standards, and broader human rights jurisprudence affirm these rights clearly, consistently, and unequivocally. Yet, in Bangladesh, long-standing misconceptions, political sensitivities, and other stakeholders' interests continue to obstruct recognition. These misunderstandings do not alter the existence of indigenous peoples in the country. They merely deepen patterns of exclusion, discrimination, and injustice. The Special Rapporteur's 2025 report could not be clearer. Denying recognition fuels discrimination, conflict, and mistrust. In Bangladesh, we have witnessed this reality for decades, from land dispossession and militarization to underrepresentation and policy exclusion. All these patterns are enabled and in many ways intensified by the continued refusal to recognize indigenous peoples. Recognition, therefore, is not symbolic, is not semantic, it is structural, and it is the gateway that unlocks access to justice, protection of land and territories, meaningful participation in governance, equality in development, and the full implementation of the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord. Without recognition, the accord cannot be realized. Without recognition, indigenous institutions remain ineffective. Without recognition, peace efforts remain fragile or merely cosmetic. And let me be absolutely clear, recognition of indigenous people is not a threat to sovereignty. It is a means of strengthening democratic legitimacy, enhancing stability, and building genuine social cohesion. It is the foundation upon which peaceful and just state-indigenous relations can finally be constructed. And it has also been mentioned by the ambassadors here before me about the Nordic experience, and which shows that recognition builds stability, not division. The Nordic experience offers us a powerful lesson and inspiration for any country hesitating on recognition. Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Finland all went through a long historical periods of assimilation and denial of indigenous peoples living in their countries. But progress began when these states took a decisive step. They recognized the Sami and the Inuit as indigenous peoples, explicitly, formally, and unequivocally. From that recognition came Sami parliaments with real influence, Greenlandic self-government agreements, strong cultural and language protection, mechanisms for land and resource decision-making, institutionalized dialogue that replaced conflict with cooperation. And what followed was not instability, but a stronger democratic resilience and greater trust, and a much more constructive partnerships between indigenous peoples and the state. Recognition is the beginning of solution, not the cause of problems. And in the CHT context, recognition will directly support peace building, local government, free, power, and informed consent-guided development, sustainable economic opportunities, stability and security in a region long marked by tension. Bangladesh does not need to replicate the Nordic model, but it can draw inspiration from its underlying principles, recognition, dialogue, institutions, and shared responsibility. Let me close with a simple truth that the Nordic experience, UN standards, and decades of work in the CHT all reinforce. There is no sustainable peace without recognition of indigenous peoples. There is no inclusive development without recognition of indigenous peoples. There is no democratic transition that is complete without recognition of indigenous peoples. Bangladesh stands at a crossroads. choosing recognition of indigenous peoples is choosing peace, justice, and genuine nation building. It is choosing to treat indigenous peoples not as a problem to be managed or a threat to be fought against, but as partners in shaping the future of the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lola Garcia Alix, for your context setting and perspective sharing speech. Now we'll go for discussion session. We have several designated discussion. I'd like to request Mr. Satish Chakma, International Affairs Secretary, Bangladesh Indigenous Youth Forum, to deliver your speech or experience. Before that, I'd like to recognize Advocate Abdullah Al Noman, lawyer, Supreme Court of Bangladesh, and Chief Executive Lawyers for Energy, Environment and Development Limited. He has joined with us online. We'll be going to him after Mr. Satish Chakma. Yeah, over to you, sir.
Thank you. I was hearing attentively the speech of IWGIA colleague and also His Excellency's ambassadors from the Nordic countries. So very warm greetings and juju in indigenous Chakma language to you all. So thanks and very much gratitude to you all to inviting me here in this important roundtable, which is very much important for me also because I am a youth of Chittagong Hill Tracts and representing the youth voice of the indigenous peoples in Chittagong Hill Tracts also. So let me go back to the history first. Actually, I was a student of Department of History in the University of Dhaka. So firstly, I want to go back to the history. You know, how the Chittagong Hill Tracts problem has been created in Bangladesh actually. It is a fabricated problem. So it has been created. So the creations of the problem of Chittagong Hill Tracts is from the policy of exclusion, othering, and policy of assimilation. You know, here Amina Mohsin ma'am is present here. I always try to refer her extraordinary thesis, her PhD thesis, that she proved that the policy of othering created the problem of Chittagong Hill Tracts and also created the other nationalism in Chittagong Hill Tracts that is called Jumbo nationalism. So from that point actually I want to say that we have to revisit the state building programs in this particular juncture because we are here right now just after a mass uprising that we already witnessed in 2024, and I was also one of the participants of this mass uprising. And then I'd like to say that the political will is very much important because you know I was born in Chittagong Hill Tracts just 3 months before of signing the historic Chittagong Hill Tracts Peace Accord. So these 3 months child actually right now is the 28 years of young person right now. So in that view actually see what was the ambition, what was the aspirations of signing this historic CHT Peace Accord. So we have to revisit those aspirations, those ambitions, what are the main expectations of the indigenous leaders and the mass people of indigenous peoples in Chittagong Hill Tracts. Then, you know, the signing of the accord was not easy, as far as I know actually. So it was the result of 26 times of continuous dialogue with different governments. I think that there were dialogue with Ershad government at least 6 times, and at least 13 times with the Khalazia government, and at least 7 times with the Awami League government. Then the Chittagong Hill Tracts Peace Accord has been signed in our country. So in this particular junction actually, what should be done after the election actually? I want to go to that part. But I'm a bit frustrated because I am not actually witnessing such upcoming policymakers here. I was very much interested to come here by seeing those names actually, who will be running the upcoming Bangladesh. Owing to that, actually, I would like to mention something from my own perspective. The thing is, my expectations to the next government is to resume dialogue between the indigenous leaders and the state of the Bangladesh. And then reform the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord Implementation and Monitoring Committee. It is very much important actually. You know, the interim government has already organized 2 times of dialogue of this Chittagong Hill Tracts Implementation and Monitoring Committee. And then formulation of the rules and business of the Chittagong Hill Tracts Land Disputes Resolution Commission. You know, the Chittagong Hill Tracts Land Dispute Resolution Commission is almost dead right now. So we have to resume to formalize these important institutions. That is one of the results of the Chittagong Hill Tracts Peace Accord. And then reform the CST Land Dispute Resolution Commission is also very much important, because right now the commission is not actually functioning properly. That's why actually I would like to say this one. And then finalize the voter list of the Chittagong Hill Tracts with the local voters. And then with that, actually the arrangement of the 3 Chittagong Hill Tracts, you know, there are 3 hill district councils and a regional council. Those are also the results of the Chittagong Hill Tracts Peace Accord. So we have to, if we want to democratize those institutions, we need to organize elections of those councils. And then hand over some special department which is very much important to restore peace and justice in Chittagong Hill Tracts. One of them is administration, law and order, police, land and land management, forest and environment, and communication. Those departments should be handed over to the 3 Hill District Council also. And then another very important things which is very crucial for establishing peace and justice in Chittagong Hill Tracts is demilitarization of the region. Because you know, in our country we always try to figure out that we are a very democratic country, but you know, the special part, Chittagong Hill Tracts, is not actually running through democracy. You know, there are always the military bureaucrats always intervening the indigenous people's daily life and livelihoods. That's why actually I would like to request to start the process of demilitarization. And another thing is to the local police. Local police is also another important things actually to establish under the provisions of the Chittagong Hill Tracts Peace Accord. Those are some of my proposal for the next government. And here I see the ambassadors of the Nordic countries also present here, and I'm very much honored and grateful for the Nordic countries that they are closely engaging with the indigenous people's issues in Chittagong Hill Tracts for a long time. So we are very much grateful for them. And as those Nordic countries are very much concerned for the rights of indigenous peoples, equality and social justice, recognition of diverse identity, participatory governance, respect for traditional knowledge and sustainable use of resource, I think those countries should also play a proactive role closely in the coming days for the rights of indigenous peoples. Last but not the least, I will conclude my speech here by mentioning a very important thing, that there is a very common say that if you do not respect our existence, please expect resistance. Otherwise, actually, you know, as I am representing the indigenous youth boys here, I think that if the policy of exclusion, the policy of othering will continue in Chittagong Tracts, then the situation will reverse into the pre-accord era. So it will not be good for any stakeholder in Bangladesh, neither for indigenous peoples nor for the state of the Bangladesh. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, Mr. Satish Chakma. Now I'd like to give the floor to Advocate Abdullah Noman. Can you hear me, Mr. Noman?
Yeah.
Yeah, please. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. Am I audible?
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. This is Abdullah Noman. I'm the Chief Executive of Lawyers for Energy, Environment and Development. With the Lawyers for Energy, Environment and Development, we are providing pro bono legal aid and services to the indigenous Bom community who has been persecuted by this state in the name of Kukichin or like this. This is basically the basic our main work with the indigenous community, especially for the indigenous Bom women. Still, we are placing 15 cases of Bom community before the High Court Division of the Supreme Court of Bangladesh, which is pending for the hearing. Being lawyer, I'm very much interested to talking about the gap and challenges of the 1997 CSTP's Accord. From my understanding, there are some basic gaps which has not been implemented by the government as well as our political leaders. From my understanding, the first issue is the land dispute resolution mechanism. The second issue is the devolution of the authority of the Hill Tract District Council, and due to the land dispute resolution mechanism or due to the proper land dispute resolution mechanism, the land rights is insecure remains, as well as there are issues of structural problem. There is a displacement, conflict, and mismanagement between the settler and the indigenous community, as well as the big issue is this militarization in the name of security is continue, which affected the civic space and everyday life of the indigenous community, which has not been implemented. However, it was a clear clauses in the CST Accord that according to the CST Accord, the whole Hill Tract area shall be in mainstreaming like the people who live in the land as well. As well as there are a basic gap in the CST Peace Accord. This is the women, the indigenous women faces intersectional discrimination as women, as indigenous person. Also, there are another gap in the Peace Accords implementation, that is limited access to effective remedies and justice for the rights violation. Recently, being a lawyer of the Bom community, I went to the district court as well as I went to the High Court Division for filing their bail application, for hearing their bail application. So, from my understanding and my experience as a lawyer of the indigenous community, the judiciary has also discriminated this community. They are not treating them as the mainstream society. They are treating them as, to some extent, miscreant. To some extent, all the Bom communities peoples are cooking. All the Bom communities peoples are working as a state like this. So the political will of the state, the principal organs of the state, the treatment of the principal organ of the state should be changed. They should have to recognize and admit that they're our people. They're indigenous people, although, but they're our people. They're the people of this land. It is the state. It is the political. It is the political parties. It's the responsibility to mainstreaming them. Otherwise, it it will create the sovereignty and external security of the state's problem. Besides this, another issue I want to discuss before you, the recognition of the indigenous community. However, according to the basic principle of the Constitution, the indigenous community has indigenous communities' rights has been granted indirectly, but being the party of the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights as well as International Covenant of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, it's a mandate as well as the principle of customary international law. It's the mandatory compliance of the Bangladesh as well as the Bangladeshi Court, especially High Court division, to ensure the basic fundamental human rights of the indigenous community through the judicial activism. However, it has not been complied as of today. In the name of common stigma that Bangladesh is not a signatory of the Indigenous Convention. It is not mandatory to sign the Indigenous Convention from the Bangladesh to ensure the indigenous rights. According to the customary international law, according to the practice of customary international law as well as ICCPR and ICSCR, Bangladesh has bound to comply the all rights to provide towards the indigenous community. So it's a right time as we are going for a reformation. It's a right time. It's a right time to take commitment from the political parties how they will treat the indigenous communities after election, as well as there shall be a common agenda of the every political parties that how they will treat the political indigenous communities, how they will implement the record, as well as how they will ensure the international human rights standard for the indigenous community. As well as it's my address to the international agencies as well as the first world countries to create a positive pressure for the Bangladesh in the EPR review regarding the treatment of the states as Bangladesh towards the indigenous community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Advocate Abdullah Noman. Now I'm requesting Mr. Pallab Chakma, Executive Director, KF. Before I go to you, I'd like to also mention about Mr. Mong Sing Hai Marma, journalist, the Daily Star, will go after.
Honorable Advisor, distinguished guest, and the audience present here. Very good morning, and let me begin my intervention by mentioning how important peace is for us, the people of indigenous peoples of Chittagong Hills Tracts. If I mention, my family was displaced 3 times during the time of conflict, and my elder brother was killed, and several of our relatives, close relatives, were killed in front of me. So I was the witness of a massacre. So, and I got this experience when I was only 7 years old boy. That's why if you discuss about the peace is more important for us, for the who are the victim of this conflict. That's why when we discuss about the implementation of the accord, the barriers of the accord, so I always feel very much connected when or always wanted to join all these kinds of discussion with full or wholeheartedly. So, from my perspective, the very important and foremost important point is realizing the Chittagong Hill Tracts problem as a political problem. It is not a security problem, it is not an economic problem. And our political leaders who realized it back in 1997, that's why they signed the peace accord. And after 28 years of the accord, if we now see the Chittagong Hill Tracts problem as security problem, as economic problem, then we are going far away from the main point. So we need to realize the Chittagong Hill Tracts issue is a political problem. And now I'm not going to go detail why and who are the responsible that the accord had not been implemented over the years. But briefly, if we consider who are the spoiler groups who contributed not to implement the peace accord, if we can find out the spoilers group, then it would be easier for our policymakers to address the issue to the point. For example, the spoiler groups are the arms groups, including the KNF, who are destabilizing the law and order in Chittagong Hill Tracts. So this is actually getting the attention of the policymakers, that the people who are responsible to implement the peace accord, now they are dealing with this kind of spoiler groups. On the other hand, the settler organization, over the years we see the Shromo Adhikar Porishod, Gono Adhikar Porishod, they are the one who are creating bar, holding the meeting of Land Commission, holding the meeting of the Task Force for Internally Displaced Refugee and Internally Displaced Persons. And you see, just few days ago, we saw that the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord Implementation Monitoring Committee had their meeting in Chittagong. Why not in Rangamati, Khagrasiwa, in Chittagong Hill Tracts? But they were forced to shift their meeting place due to the creating bar of this spoiler group, like settler organizations. So, and also, there are also a vested interest within the security apparatus, because there is a saying that the security apparatus think that if the accord is implemented, then their budget will reduce, their control over that particular territory will reduce, and also the influence will also reduce. That's why they create bar every time. So if our policymakers can address all these points, then we can find out the solution in coming days. That's my personal perspective. On the other hand, my fellow friend Shotaj already mentioned about the policy of othering, and this is very important, and this othering is at the same time is giving us tag like separatist, also terrorist, and by tagging or marking us as, considering us as others, at the same time we are actually accepting the security first approach instead of right first approach. Because when we are considering indigenous people as separatist, as criminal, as terrorist, then we always think about taking the security action, ignoring or undermining their political rights on other rights. That's why this is very important. At the same time, we always see that there is propaganda that indigenous, the Chittagong village is going to be an independent Christian state, or they are mobilizing the people to become the independent. But the reality is, since the beginning of the independence of this country, our political leaders always demanding to be part of this constitution. They are demanding for the ethnic recognition of our distinct identities. But it was always ignored by the political elites of this country. And another thing is, I think this is also important. Suppose the main point of the Chittagong Hillchaks, the problem is the land issue. So, and why land commission still cannot function, and why the Bengal states are creating problem one after another, because they are also thinking that they are totally insecure, because our government cannot produce any viable options for them. Suppose if the land commission is being functional, and if the indigenous people get their land back, that means the settlers who are now occupying the land of indigenous people, they need to be shifted another place. So are the government interested to show the options, what is the option, how those people will survive, what is the plan, alternative plan of the government for these people who lost their land. So I think government should also mention about the alternative rehabilitation plan or security plan for this people. And so I'm not going to problem again and only share some of the recommendations. If I consider there are several questions here. So the question number 3, what is the provision of the 1997 peace accord should be considered for highest priority? I think the land commission. And if the government can have the political will and come forward with a strong commitment to make the land commission functional, and they can do this. Because if we see during the signing of the accord 1997, during that time also there was huge protest, there's a strong opposition during that time. Even though the Sheikh government during that time, they took the strong, bold decision to solve this problem. So if new political leaders, if they take the bold step to make the land commission functional, they can do that. And number 7, if you could recommend any actionable step to improve the human rights situation. As a human rights organization, I recommend that we don't need to go far away. Just if we can deliver justice of the recent incidents. Because over the years we are seeing that the culture of impunity, people are killing, and women are raped. So, but in the ground there is no justice. So if we can form a credible proof body to investigate the recent incidents in Rangamati or Khagachori, and even last killing in Guimara. So if we can punish the perpetrators, then it will actually help us to set up an example that the perpetrators who was punished, and the new incidents we can avoid new incidents. And finally, we already discussed about the UPR, and in the last UPR circle, Bangladesh government accepted particular recommendation on the full implementation of Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord, and also another recommendation was the declaration of the roadmap for implementation of the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord. And this is very important. If we can, this is also another expectation from the government, and I think the political party should commit to the nation that they will implement the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord and by introducing the roadmap. And my final point is, we are very encouraged that the diplomatic missions are taking initiative to bring the people here discussing and trying to narrow the gap by having this kind of discussion. At the same time, I also request diplomatic missions, the friendly states, to formalize a group of friends, a formal consultative group to offer technical expertise while keeping the government accountable to its own CST pre-accord commitments. I think if we can have this diplomatic friends group, they can also have the meeting dialogue with the pre-accord implementation and monitoring committee, and this actually help the whole process or government to be accountable. Thank you for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Pallab Chakma, Executive Director, Kapaing Foundation. Now I am giving the floor to Mr. Mong Sing Hai Marma, journalist from Daily Star. After you, I'll go to Barrister Sarah Hussain. Yeah.
Dear President, Honorable Chief Guest and discussed dialogue policymaker and present all to getting my greeting to all. I'm working at Daily Star and I'm working in Bandarban, the field level, and I basically staying in Bandarban, so I have more experience and I have more eyewitness for the real situations in the Chittagong Hill Tracts and what's happened nowadays. The Chittagong Hill Tracts, if we taught Chittagong Hill Tracts, then we know Bandarban, Chittagong, Khakachuri and Rangamati, the three districts. Nearly 3 decades after the 1987 Chittagong Hill Tracts peace accord, the lived realities of the equality, justice, dignity and indigenous peoples remained limited to live there day by day. This we eyewitness and we witness. At the center of the ongoing tensions lies the land question. The lack of legal recognition of customary land systems combined with the complex and record and land acquisition in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, lack of development and security continues to displace indigenous people without a fully functional and empowered land commission. Sustain and implementation, that is the main fact. And development efforts are visible in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, but yet a fundamental questions remain. Development for whom? So I have a question. So development text including indigenous people from meaningful participation risks depending inadequately and social fragmentation sustainable. Just like a cookie chain, so we know everyone the situation of cookie chain and the bomb community. Those are our 12 indigenous people in Bandarban are living 12 others community, Bomb, Tripura, Chakma and others. And then I think Bomb is the most powerful and most sustainable and more than the graving the land of the Chittagong Hill Tracts. But nowadays the military person and abuse to the Bomb community, then they migrate from their land. It's the more fact. But we know Bomb is military person. All Bom community are not the equal to others, we know. But I have some questions for today, all of the delegates. If we want to peace Chittagong Hill Tracts, we finally feel working evidence of the observation, the lack of goodwill within the military and bureaucratic structure is repeatedly obstructing the implementation of the CST peace accord, peace process. It is a main fact. I'm able to say. Despite effort to establish a school in the remote village, firstly, the government and representation, the Hill District Council were and advisor as the conversation indigenous self-governance. However, appointed-based leadership and limited community accountability have worked at the public trust. These institutions require capable representative indigenous leadership committed to the transparency, environmental stewardship, and community-centered development. Secondly, education is the most fundamental base in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'm giving the floor to Barrister Sarah Hussain, Honorary Executive Director, Bangladesh Legal Aid and Services Trust. So after you, we'll go to Professor Amina Hussain.
Thank you very much. As I think all previous speakers have said, the situation in this Hill Tracts is, requires a political solution at the end of the day and a political approach. And although I want to speak about issues of justice and access to justice in the Hill Tracts, I think it's also important that that's not just about technical solutions or even looking at the issues that are before the courts. It is important to recall that the CHT Accord itself remains an issue that is still before the courts. There was a challenge to the Accord. And the parties that were involved in bringing that challenge are the parties that are now politically active and in the ascendant. So I think we have to take a hard look at that situation. And that's why I think while welcoming, of course, the involvement of all of the Nordic countries in facilitating this dialogue, we also have to be very aware of the limits of the approach that's been suggested and the hard realities of the context we're in Bangladesh, what is possible and where we are, and why it is we haven't had movement, or what movement rather we have had on the Accord implementation in all the years that one of our first speakers, Shottage, has been alive, and why we haven't seen movement in certain areas. So I think we need to be a bit clearer about where the challenges are and which are the institutions that have not facilitated that. And as several speakers have said, if there is an opportunity now for any kind of political reset, how will that happen and what will be the basis of that discussion? Surely a starting point must be the language that we heard in July last year, which was about addressing discrimination. It's painful to speak about it now for many people, particularly for those who are directly from the Hill Tracts and whose lives are directly impacted by that. But of course, the language of discrimination, you have not of non-discrimination and addressing discrimination has become increasingly faint in the course of the last in political manifestos and the political commitments that are being made. So perhaps the first starting point is to reassert that. And if we try to look at what we have by way of tools in terms of moving forward, we are not in the position we were in last year where we were being told the Constitution would be scrapped in its entirety. That's not the position. So we have the equality commitments that are in the Constitution that help us to move forward. We have the commitments which are controversial, recognizing the separate and distinct character of indigenous peoples, albeit not using the language. And that's a controversy, and there are debates about that issue, whether people reject Article 23 or accept it, feel it's helped people move forward. But that's again an issue that's going to come up, because the question of the 15th Amendment is also one that has been before our courts and one that will be considered by any parliament that comes into being. So I think these questions about the language and the nomenclature, those are things to discuss, but the really important thing is about what will be the approach in terms of ensuring equal and full rights for indigenous people in the hill tracts, along with other residents of the hill tracts, along with other people in the country. Land Commission, and I fully agree with what's been said about the need for its activation, but I think we need to have a hard look at why it's not been activated. We've had many of these dialogues over 28 years. Many specific recommendations have been made. Many appointments have been made to the Land Commission, but it has never, despite multiple appointments over multiple years, moved forward. And recognizing that the Land Commission can only move forward if it recognizes community land rights of indigenous people has to be the first stepping point. We cannot have a land commission being activated which behaves as though hill tracts is exactly the same as every other part of Bangladesh, and the demography there is the same as every other part of Bangladesh, and we just apply ordinary laws. That's step one. In terms of the justice system, I think that there are now many ordinary courts that apply in the rest of the country, that exist in the rest of the country, that also exist in the hill tracts. But there are real challenges, I think, in terms of how they operate. Firstly, in terms of no efforts really being made institutionally to inform those who sit in these courts, again, about the fact there are diverse legal traditions within the hill tracts that need to be understood. Not only in terms of CHT regulation, but customary laws. We don't provide any additional training, orientation to anyone who goes into those courts to deal with them. Secondly, we don't recognize again, not everyone around this table may agree with me, but one of the parts of our judicial system that don't operate in the hill tracts, and that actually we have some research from BLAST advocating why this is necessary. The family courts are one institution that doesn't exist in the hill tracts. Again, there's different views on whether they should or shouldn't exist, but if they were to be set up, and they were again to be informed by knowledge of community of the laws applicable to different communities, and they were to have representation from different communities, I think that would be a very different, that would be a very, I think, uncontroversial and way in which to start addressing and impact justice issues, which are not the very hardcore top-line justice issues we talked about in terms of gross human rights violations, which we've seen over many years, where there's been impunity, lack of efforts to ensure accountability, but they're about day-to-day situations that affect every person, indigenous person or non-indigenous person, and they're a way of finding a solution. There's also in the hill tracts a significant, important non-formal justice system. For the indigenous people, there are headmen and karbaris. For the non-indigenous, there are union purishods, and there's own non-formal shalish system. These can also be strengthened and engaged with, because these justice processes are ways of building legitimacy, ways also of building peace and addressing dispute resolution in terms of day-to-day practices. Here again, issues of representation are crucial. It's wonderful to see there are young people here today, particularly from the indigenous community, and very senior and experienced people as well at the same time. But these justice institutions can be transformed if we see how to engage a new generation in how they operate, both in giving responses and critique, as they're doing today, of where they see the challenges, but also being part of the solution in terms of delivering justice. And that's both in the non-formal process and in the formal process. And finally, in terms of the very challenging issues we've seen over so many years, and unfortunately also this year, some of the, I think, most disturbing incidents that have happened this year, as Paula mentioned, included the killings that happened in Rangamati, also incidents of allegations of rape. There's a long history of impunity in relation to human rights violations in the Hill Tracts. But I think it's fair to say that while the Hill Tracts is, of course, standalone and particularly disturbing, that's also a history that Bangladesh has over these 50 years, and particularly over these 15 years. And this is a moment when we're speaking. Today there's a judgment coming in the ICT, maybe it's already started, about one of the particularly gross set of killings in Jankarpur last year in July. So there are efforts to try and address the past that are ongoing. At least we have national conversations and debates about how we're going to address that process. So we have a moment where we can talk about, it's difficult and challenging, and I'm certainly not going to say we're having the right conversations or they're going in the right direction necessarily, but the fact they're happening means that there's a moment in which that conversation should include the Hill Tracts within it. And we should be talking about issues. Kalpana Chakma's face was on many walls. I think even when you come to this building, you'll see it on the walls around you. But Kalpana Chakma's case is perhaps the emblematic case of impunity in Bangladesh. 30 years and no investigation, no results. So I think beginning this conversation about impunity, but looking at the practical efforts we have to make to see where we are now, what is politically possible, and how do we open the dialogue. Today we are, of course, lacking the political actors in the room. It's absolutely crucial that we have that dialogue, I think, with each individual body to identify, each individual party, to identify what their commitments are to take things forward in the Hill Tracts in terms of inclusion and non-discrimination. And just a final 2 points about institutions and also the private sector. In terms of justice institutions, I've talked about courts, we think about courts, but there are, of course, other institutions that can play crucial role, not just the Land Disputes Commission, but the Human Rights Commission, which has still not seen the light of day this year. I don't know if it will before the 12th of February, perhaps not. But it will be very important that the National Human Rights Commission has representation, I think, from people in the Hill Tracts, particularly from Indigenous people, and that it has clearly marked out, delineated terms of reference, allowing it to work on issues regarding human rights in the Hill Tracts. Similarly with the Information Commission. And a final point, I think, would be about the private sector in terms of addressing rights and realities in the Hill Tracts. We speak about, of course, the obligations of the state and different state bodies, the need to activate the Hill District Councils, the need to ensure inclusion and representation, hold good to the promises in the accord. But I think we can also push more for including representation with the private sector as well, and including engagement, which involves, again, respect for the rights of Indigenous people and consultation, critical consultations, to ensure that any development projects, investments, any project development that happens in that area ensures full consultation with Indigenous people and with residents of the Hill Tract. So I just want to give one small point to finish with, which, because I've mentioned this before the Honorable Advisor on a number of occasions. There's an interesting example. This year, this past 14 months, the interim government made appointments to the Hill District Councils. I've been dealing with the case during most of this year, where one of the appointments to the Hill District Council of a woman member from a particular community was challenged by other Indigenous people on the grounds that she was a person who by marriage had lost her ethnic status. Very unfortunate that this case is going on for more than 10 months now, I think, without any resolution. But I think it also raises the point that when we talk about the rights of Indigenous peoples, we should also be talking very clearly about intersectional discrimination and demanding Indigenous or non-Indigenous. We also have to have respect for women's rights and recognizing women's identity as individuals, and not use Indigenous identity to deny women's rights for equality within the community and of course within the state as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Barrister Sahar Hussain. Now I'd like to request Dr. Amina Mohsin, Professor and former Chairperson, Department of International Relations, University of Dhaka, to deliver your speech. After that, I'll go to Professor.
Thank you so much. And again, let me begin by thanking the CPTA for arranging this program. I think this is a very critical juncture at the Bangladesh, in Bangladesh's history, and at a point of time when, as Sarah rightly pointed out, that we have aspirations, we have expectations, though they are fading, but at least we can talk about issues, and this is a moment we should hold on to. Let me begin by saying that I visited Chittagong Hill Tracts in November 2025 after 14 years. And it's not that it was out of a deliberate choice that I did not go to Chittagong Hill Tracts, but rather I could not go to Chittagong Hill Tracts because I had been working on Chittagong Hill Tracts and had been talking about issues on Chittagong Hill Tracts. I guess I can continue talking since I'm used to talking. I had several meetings with the people in Chittagong Hill Tracts, and two statements really caught my attention. In Khagrachori, one of the headmen said to me that, look, since the 17th we have had this Operation Uttoran. I mean, this was a military operation which was undertaken during the counterinsurgency period. And then he said that now we have the Operation Dabanol. This is the name which is given to another military operation in the name of counterterrorism. So he said that if you have one operation after another, and yet you find that the problem is not being resolved, then the doctor should realize that maybe another kind of medicine is required there. It is not something that you can do away with clinically. So as Sarah pointed out, this is not a development issue, complex as well as a political issue. And what struck me that after 14 years, I found that Chittagong Hill Tracts, I saw a lot of development has taken place, development in the sense of roads, infrastructure, the rooms had ACs and all those things. But the mindset has not changed at all. It is exactly where I would say that physically I had left the place, but I had been connected with the people of CHD. And though, speakers over here talked about the CHT Accord, but personally I find that the Accord itself is limited on many counts. So perhaps when you talk of the full implementation of the Accord, one has to look at the Accord itself. And like the land issue, why the land issue is not being resolved? I mean, the anomalies were there right from the beginning. I mean, without recognition of the indigenous people, how can you have a land commission which does not even recognize the indigenous conception of land? Then how can you resolve the issue? And it is like putting the cart before the horse. The situation is like that. So one has the recognition question, as our colleague from IWGIA pointed out very rightly, that the recognition question must come. Otherwise, you can't just move forward in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, because unless the Bangladesh government recognizes that indigenous people are there and allows us to use the word indigenous. One journalist told me that he was given a notice, and journalist from Rangamati, I think he is from Prothumal or some other, that he was given a notice that why he had used the word indigenous. And they were having a mala. Mala is fair, which was earlier called Indigenous Mala. Now they just call it Parbuttu Mala. Parbuttu means Hill Tracts Mala. So, one has changed the names and everything. So, if what bothered me is that even during this, this period when we are talking of pluralism, one could not see that pluralism in the hills. So I think that is very important, that one has to look at how you, when we talk about the full implementation of the CHT Accord, one has to look at the limits of the CHT Accord. The women question, as Sarah pointed out, has remained unaddressed in the CHT Accord. Kalpana Chakma, of course, is one of the most, visible cases. But then another head woman, who is a woman, headman, but who is a woman in Khagrachari told me that if there is another insurgency in the CHT, it would be on the woman question, because the cases of rapes have gone up. There's this culture of impunity also in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. So one has to understand those things, that how to address these and how to strengthen the justice mechanism. That is very critical. You have the local justice system, and we have parallel sets of administration in the CHT. On the one hand, I mean, it's such a strange situation. You have the 1900 manual, you have the CHT Accord, you have the Bangladesh system, I mean, which is, like the administrative system, which is across all over the country. You have the military over there. So you really don't know where the loci of power is and who to go to. And as I said, that the situation has not changed much. Just to come from Bandarbun to Khagrachari, I had to cross 9 military checkposts. And every time I had to give my national ID card, and they were asking me this question, are you Sthaniyo? Sthaniyo means are you a local or you are an outsider? So you have these categorization, and the process of otherization has not stopped at all in the CHT. I mean, just to cross over to another district, if you have to cross 9 military checkposts, and a Bengali person like me, if I feel scared, one can well imagine that what it means for other people, the local residents. So justice is a big issue. Women question is, of course, a big issue. But the lack of trust, that really bothered me, that there is absolutely no trust between the, Pallab is my former student, and he did say that, like the Bengali settlers are a spoiler. I can see the sentiment that is behind it, and I have been very critical about it. But then what does one do about it? I mean, they have been living there for decades, and they are not in a very happy situation also. So one has to, I mean, this is an issue that the Bangladesh government has to address. And one has to open up the spaces for dialogues. I mean, the trust building, Fahmida pointed out confidence building measures. So it is not only in Dhaka that we build up these confidence building measures, but we have to have these dialogues in the Chittagong Hill Tracts itself. And I find that, like Pallab sat very happily with my Bengali students in Dhaka University. But I don't see that happening in Chittagong Hill Tracts itself. So you have to think of the politics of space also. And there I think that critical interventions are needed, and dialogue. I mean, how does one move ahead in building trust? That is something very important. The first step I see is that, by recognizing, by giving recognition to the hill people, not only to the hill people, we have, ethnic minority groups in the plains also. Bangladesh has over 70 plus ethnic minority groups. No matter how, less the number is, but at least one needs to give them recognition that it is an ethnically pluralistic society. So that is something which is very critical. Unless that recognition is given, one cannot, this process of othering will continue. And Since CHT, I guess like one of my Garo students once told me that the hill people are fortunate because the NGOs could not move into the into the CHT. That's why they could build up an like a movement. But the NGOs have moved in very strongly in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. I am not an NGO person. This is just a statement I am making, which was made by a Garo person. NGOs have done a lot of good work, but at the same time, one also has to recognize the like the limitations or the kind of messages that go into regions which have issues and problems. So I would just conclude by saying that for me it is very important that recognition is given, institutions are strengthened, but before strengthening the institutions, one needs to reform the institutions. Sarah talked about the Shalish system, the Karbari, the local administration system over there, and also there are differences. I mean, one cannot, I'll just be finishing, one cannot generalize the situation in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, because the voices you hear from Bandhaban, these are quite different from what you hear in Rangamati, and also what you hear in Khagrachori. It is different. So one has to look at the intersectionality of the things, and Sarah brought out a very important point, that women in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, I mean, though we say that, like they are much more empowered than the Bengali women, but the kind of marginalization that is there, I mean, women in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, they do not have land rights. And if they marry outside their community, they are de-ethnicized. So that is also an issue. So these are issues that one needs to address. One can't just romanticize about things. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Amina Mohsin. Now, I'd like to request Dr. Iftikharuzzaman, Executive Director, Transparency International Bangladesh, TIB, to deliver your speech. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. My apologies for coming a bit late. I sought permission of the organizers that I'll be delayed. I missed some discussions, but I'm not an expert on this subject. Whatever I know, little. Initially, my knowledge actually of CHT started through my introduction with Professor Mohsin, and also whatever little I have personally been involved in. Just a couple of points. I don't want to repeat what has been said, but the key issue for me is the transformation of the demographic, social, cultural, religious, and political landscape of CHT that has taken place over the years. It's quite normal, migrations takes place from one place to another globally. In Bangladesh also, there is normal process. But the deliberate process that started in the 70s and especially late 70s, that actually was deliberate in political sense. It has a political purpose. It had a strategic purpose, and which has really brought us to the situation that we are talking about here. The purpose was to kind of eventually transform a political problem into a security problem. And by the way, the authority that was in power during that period of deliberate settlement is set to become the winners in the forthcoming election. And it remains to be seen whether and if they would like to look back and reassess the success and failures of that deliberate settlement in CHT. The settler organizations have been over-empowered by the authority that are in absolute control of the CHT region. That's the Armed Forces of Bangladesh and their security agencies, especially the GFI. And everybody knows it, very few people talks about it. And when they talk, they are posturing against it as conspirators of the state, separatists and so on. And I've been a victim of that for, especially recently, and perhaps from tomorrow the number of posters will increase. But I have to call a spade a spade. And we are here, I mean, we are talking to the converted. Each of us are converted, practically. We don't have the possibility, we don't see any initiative, nor do we have the possibility of engaging the key actors in this discourse, in this discussion. And unless we can do that, I don't think we can ever resolve whether this issue of peace in CHT or justice, rights. We can have some, paracetamols for treatment of cancer. So that's what is actually happening. So my main point is that, I would like to see that, for example, one of the political parties, even before the term indigenous became a pariah in Bangladesh, that was in 2015. And I hope some of you know the background of it. The illegality, quoted unquote, of the term indigenous originated from the perception that if indigenous rights are violated by security forces of any country, they may be having difficulty in participating in peacekeeping operations, UN peacekeeping operations. So some bright people came up with this idea that we don't have any indigenous community in Bangladesh. So there is no violation of indigenous rights. As if tomorrow they will say that there are no human beings in Bangladesh, so that there are no human rights violation in Bangladesh. That's the parallel. So as a result of which we don't have the recognition of indigenous communities as, not to speak of the constitution, as actually as human entities, That's the identity of these indigenous communities. That's been denied. And that continues to be denied. So I would love to see if any political party in their election manifesto uses the term indigenous rights. And can we engage in that process of really trying to persuade that? The BNP's 31-point charter, which was, something very proud, they are very proud of, perhaps for good reasons, doesn't use the word indigenous people. They refer to the same terminology as used by the authoritarian forces that they fought against. So it's about also, apart from the securitization, I think it's about our failure as a nation to realize that indigenous rights are not only the rights of the indigenous people, it's about the rights of the whole nation. It's a national issue, it's not an issue of indigenous communities only. We have not been able to transform that into a national issue. Because we are perhaps genetically majoritarian, and this, the otherhood, we versus they, is something inbuilt in our mindsets in general, but more so in political parties, I think, because political parties, and especially in the current context, when we are talking of many expectations from the post-July movement election, forthcoming election from the political parties, what are the political capital of these parties? Political capital of all our parties is money, muscle, and religion. And if you put that in that frame, CHT, Chittagong, human rights do not exist. In no way. Nevertheless, I think we have an opportunity to try and see whether, and to what extent, we can work with the stakeholders of the CHT indigenous community, can persuade the political parties to look at the indigenous rights from different perspective than they have been ever been able to do. I'll finish by saying that, you know, I hate to see this, and I've said this before. I'm fully convinced that peace will never be established in CHT, nor will justice be promoted in CHT, nor rights of the indigenous people will be established until and unless. And it can be done by any political party, nor any government of Bangladesh. I can put it in writing and say it again. It cannot be resolved by any political party, any ruling party, any government of the day in Bangladesh until and unless they have engaged with the armed forces of Bangladesh. They are in full control. They know how to divide and rule, how to securitize a political problem and succeed there. And if they are willing to, genuinely, if we can persuade that this is a national interest, that they can set example, that they can practice what they have been practicing all over the world, 69 plus countries. They claim to be, and we are proud of that. They have promoted peace or contributed to the peacekeeping globally. Currently, at least 10 countries, there are 10 operations, peacekeeping operations that Bangladesh armed forces are involved. So if globally they can do this, why can't they do this in a region that is in near total control of the armed forces of Bangladesh? Uttaran and Dabano were mentioned. There will be another version of the same thing, but this can be only brought to a peace and justice formula, reconciliation formula, only if the armed forces of Bangladesh changes their mindset and wants to really contribute to the peace process. You know, some of the colleagues are sitting across the table, our international friends, not only people like me, have problems in visiting CHD. Why? You know, our friend is finishing her tenure in Bangladesh of nearly 4 years. Successive attempts to visit CHD has failed. Checkposts. Checkposts are not only checkposts. Checkposts also determine, checkposts in strategic sense, also determine today how many kilos of potato a day can be bought by an indigenous household. That's the state of right. And who has determined this, who has done this? It's the armed forces of Bangladesh. So let's try and talk to them. Let's try to persuade the political parties, whether they'll be coming to power or be in opposition or be active in the political space of Bangladesh, to sit down and work with the armed forces of Bangladesh to try and resolve this problem. It's only then that we can expect something positive. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have listened and learned from the designated discussion of this session. Now we'll move forward, and I'm requesting the Ambassador, Embassy of Sweden in Bangladesh, His Excellency Mr. Nicholas Linnaeus Ragnar Wicks, to deliver his remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. You can hear me, I hope. Distinguished colleagues, guests, friends, let me begin once again by thanking CPD and the Daily Star, together with my Nordic colleagues, for having convened this discussion, which is timely, which has been something that, a discussion that has been going on for quite many years now. Warm thanks also to all the speakers for all of your remarks and for sharing your experiences and your candidness in contributing. Today we have discussed, well, we're still discussing, issues that aren't new to Bangladesh. We're talking about many decades. neither to the people of the hill tracts. They're not new. These are burning issues that nevertheless receive far too little attention. Today's interventions have been powerful reminders that this is still the case. They've also reminded us that indigenous rights are not only about land use, natural resources, or development projects. They are equally about human dignity, voice and trust between citizens and the state, about whether or not people feel seen, heard, and respected. As Swedish Sami Parliament President Marianne Groik has recently reminded us, when strategic decisions are taken without indigenous peoples around them or over their head, or over their heads rather, the consequences risk becoming permanent, affecting not only land and livelihoods, but also culture, language, and ways of life that goes centuries or millennia back. One message from today's discussion has been particularly clear. Recognition of indigenous peoples is not symbolic, it is foundational. It is a prerequisite for access to justice, for meaningful participation in decision making, and for sustainable peace. But beyond that, it is also about the right of a people to maintain and develop their culture, language, and identity, and to pass them on to future generations. From a Nordic perspective, this resonates deeply. Our own histories show that we have not always gotten this right. There is no simple model to copy and no ready-made solutions. But our experience does suggest that inclusive approaches grounded in dialogue, recognition, and trust can ultimately strengthen both the state and society. Sweden, together with Denmark, Norway, and IWGIA, stand ready to remain a constructive partner in this, to listen, share experiences, and develop solutions with the incoming elected government and others, other parts of the state, other parts of the government. I hope today's discussion will be seen, certainly not seen as an endpoint, but as a step toward continued and renewed dialogue, and also political commitment. With this, I conclude my remarks, and I look forward to future engagements with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, His Excellency Mr. Nicholas Leonas Ragnar, Wicks, Ambassador, Embassy of Sweden of Bangladesh. Ladies and gentlemen, now I am requesting to the chief guest to deliver his speech, Mr. Supradeep Chakma, Honorable Advisor, Ministry of Chittagong Hill Tracts Affairs and Interim Government of Bangladesh. Over to you, sir.
Sound boro amar osubidha hobe na. Anyway, thank you Hamida for organizing such beautiful dialogue And also, I found my three colleagues here. I was talking sometime before also on the different issues. And I see here also Sarapa, Ittikarbai, and Madam here. Thank you very much. You see, you are thinking about something called Chittagong Hill Tracts. I don't know where to start. And I have taken it as a learning process because I will be unemployed within 2-3 weeks. So I was thinking that, you see, it is a learning process for me. But I never thought that, you see, I have to speak. So I came here to say something, you see, and I deeply appreciate, especially our three friends from Nordic countries, that you have a feeling on Chittagong Hill Tracts, and you have a feeling on human being. Basically, I want to start with, as Mainuddin Badal once said, whatever you are saying about Chittagong Hill Tracts, first you have to think about whether these people are human beings. It is Mainuddin Badal, he is dead now. He said it in somewhere. It is the majority has to recognize it, whether we, the people in Chittagong Hill Tracts, we are human beings. If we are human beings, then process starts. If we are not, then you can stop immediately. This is where I stand. And I came today and hearing from all of you the valid points on Chittagong Hill Tracts, and so much emotional I am hearing of all of you. Let me give some, you see, I'm not giving you some perspective, but let me say something, what Dr. Jaman said. I was hearing nowadays election engineering, and all these things, good. Even I see this in Khagrasuri especially, election engineering is going on very much. And seeing Khagrasuri constituency, apparently it proved that the people in Khagrasuri are so much, I will say, orphan, and they don't know how they will decide their future leader. Because hill people, they themselves putting so much candidate, meaning that they are rootless. Simply I will say they are rootless. That's why they were putting 7-8 hill candidates there against two powerful candidates from Jamaat Islami and BNP. They should not do it. And it is not only that. Why regional political party are supporting some one of this and some other of this? Why? So let them face the music in 2 weeks' time. They will understand what is going on. But my engineering is not like that engineering. My engineering is demographic engineering. What happened in Chittagong Hill Tracts since 1971. In 47, about 3% Bengalis were living in Chittagong Hill Tracts in 47. Come on, in 1971, we got 22%. Now, why more than 50% as of now? As Dr. Jaman rightly pointed, why it happened. Definitely, it is political, you see, perception or political issue of the government called Geo-Roman government. General Jia did it personally. Basically, this demographic engineering is something, it has been used in the human history, not only here in Bangladesh. Let me tell you that in 1954, Ayub government took the Feni and Nuakhali people to Indian border called Ramgarh and above. A good number they have taken in 1954. But President Jia took a good lesson from Malaysia. In Malaysia, they settled a lot of Bhumiputro to the Chinese dominated lands in 1940. So all these things are happening. So what government doing is right peopling on to unpeopling of CST people. This is very simple. Right peopling to unpeopling the Chittagong Hill Tracts. So here it comes the land, it comes the right, and it comes now the other human values. This is what our, you see, our leadership or Chittagong Hill Tracts intellectual or the nation as a whole are not taking seriously. Even after they take it seriously, this majority group of people, it is very difficult now. As Dr. Jaman said, It is not controlled by so-called government. So I have to endorse what you are saying because I am from here. Let me give you an example. Last week I was in Khagrasuri and went for what? Yes or no referendum. I didn't go for vote. I said that I came here for a referendum, not for vote. I mean, not a vote, for gonna vote. But even after gonna vote, I came here only for a yes vote, not for no vote. This is what you see, my explanation will be. So going there, I see there are two incidents. One is just in my back step of my village. You see land crisis. The other one, I heard it in Bandarban over Muro nations. Came back from there, I said, even I raised the voice in cabinet. I said that, you see, you are stepping too much. I just clearly said this as a word. You are stepping too much. Now you are on my back. Do you think that I can go back to Chittagong? Do you think that I can go back to my home? I need a justice here. But you see, what happened to Justice Department in Chittagong or even all over Bangladesh? These people, police have arrested 7, 8 people. Next day, they were on bail. Next day, they were on bail. Then the SP was telling me, I was shouting over SP and DC. What do you think? Why you are stepping on my back? So they said to me that, sir, we arrested 8 people. And among the 8 people, one policeman was there. He was also in this incident. He said that, sir, we put them all to the justice. But if they give them the bail, what can we do? This is the thing. Second, about Bandarban Muro community, that fellow Jafar was just released. On the same day, he was again caught by the villagers doing again the same job. Now, sometimes I feel that, you see, why these people are always being beaten? Why they cannot beat? Right? If somebody want to hit me, I will try to hit at least one. I know that I will die next moment. Seriously, I said even in the parliament, in the cabinet, oh no, it is too much. Since being as advisor in the cabinet, though I was not at all willing to come and do this job, I only came here, let me tell you. If Supradip Chakma doesn't join in the cabinet, maybe Abdullah Chakma, maybe Abdullah Chakma would be joining there. That's why I came here. Otherwise, I have no so far intention going in this political tension and political dialogues. I want to live in a peaceful life in my life. I have done a good innings in Foreign Office, and after that also in UNDP, and after that also I was doing quite good, you see, the job as a development professional. Now you see, the unfortunate thing is it is not only government of Bangladesh, not only, you see, my colleagues, I know that, my fellow brothers will not take it positively. Why we are blaming them now? Come on. We have 3 hill districts. You are saying no good governance. I agree on that. We have development board. Again, you will be saying no good governance. We have regional council, no comment. Okay. So here it is, the crack is. Why government is paying? Even yesterday you will see that we clear you see road, it will cost government about 1100 crore from Khagrasuri to Rangamati. Government is ready to help us. Why you cannot take it? We have to, you see, we have to increase our empowerment. We have to increase our capacity. We have to increase our potential. Last 1 year and 6 months about, I have been trying only 2 issues called quality education and livelihood development. Am I getting the cooperation from these 3 hill districts and others? Not at all. No, not at all. They have their own thinking process. I said that my only agenda are very simple: quality education and livelihood development. I don't want to go for help. Even I always say that in this country, if 100 million people right away die, including me, and the other remains well, I'm ready to die. This is what it is. So I never discuss about health. Go to the health. No, health is not the issue for me. Even it may happen in Chittagong Hill Tracts. Sorry. So why it will not come up? In the, just it is my own secret, I have to tell you. That board still failed to give me the DPS that I will approve to go for tender. 210 crore takas. What they will do with this? Now it is 7 months of the financial year. Is it government is not giving? Please. None of our so-called intellectual and elites in Rangamati, Khagrasuri or Bandaman say anything about the regional institutions. Why they are not saying anything? That you are not performing well, you are not doing the well-being for the common people of the hills. Nobody say any words. Only I have to say all these things, being the advisor of the hill ministry. So it is here. You have to understand your own situation. Only then Nordics and majority people will come to help us. They don't know even where to help us because we don't know where is our problem. So this is the problem. And doing so, because I am so much a diehard of increasing quality education in Chittagong Hill Tracts, tomorrow we will be opening, and it is the instruction of Professor Yunus, go for digital education. Because during last government period, they appointed such teacher who cannot even read and write a sentence or a para. So they are the teacher, primary school teacher now in Khagrasuri. So Professor Yunus said that go for digital education, and we have allocated already 30 crores of taka for digital education. Forcefully, tomorrow I will be opening with in presence of Professor Yunus 12 schools, and I put 30 crores of taka for digital school with a Starlink connection. Why they are not doing it? Since October, I was saying that I want to go for DPM, direct purchasing method, not for tender. And I will take all the responsibility, whether mismanagement or misuse of money. I will take it. If necessary, I will go to the jail for this. Still, they are not doing. My chairmen are not. Finally, look at, you see, again I have to go back to even some military machineries. I said that Bangladesh machine tools factory go and put your DPM purchase, because Bengali is very easy. They only afraid of stick. So I am using that stick now in Chittagong Hill Tracts. I have no other way. Come on now. You see, you are saying about good governance. If we have good governance, maybe it doesn't happen. Now you will say that this is your baby, you appointed it. Yes, my baby, I appointed it, but under pressure. Do you think that all these chairmen I appointed, all these members I appointed? No. I was pressurized, simply. And I crossed many names. I put many names of my choice. It doesn't, it did not stand. So, Chittagong Hill Tracts is something like that. Now, Sarapa and about Kalpana, I have a response to you. Does any CST people know there was a bill called Disappearance Bill in the cabinet, which Adil, you see, vehemently worked for it. It is very clear in Disappearance Bill that Kalpana's justice can be sought. Now go for it. Why Fedos is, you see, enjoying his good days here and there. It is there, it is clearly there. Now what Madam said about the, you see, taking out of ID photocopy in every, you see, security station. Perhaps now I want to see that this should be strengthened in Chittagong Hill Tracts. What happened in Khagrasuri and Bandarban, these criminals just run away. If we have security checkup on the border post, at least we can have some kind of you see, identification mark. It is not happening. I seriously believe that we should have something called Mizoram and Nagaland type of security checkup in Chittagong Hill Tracts. Because you see, informal worker, especially in the furniture shops in Chittagong, there are thousands of, in 3 Hill district, you can see this, they all are informal workers in Chittagong Hill Tracts, and they go there without any trace. Something they, you see, anyone needs, that they always use them, and without, if incident happen, without trace. They can get them anywhere. So it is better, you see. I even insisted 3 districts, DCs and SPs, give them the ID card, informal worker. This is what I asked them, to give them the ID card, so that we at least trace out who is criminal or not criminal. Now what happened? If you just give them some amount of money, stand and go there. And let me say you, one other things also. Do you think that in Chittagong Hill Tracts, whether JSS, UPDF, or JSS, Larma, or Democratic UPDF, only hillmen? No. It is village after village of Bengali also now join there, because they go for extortion. And they just do the extortion in the name of it. And they also give some money to their bosses. They are very, you see, honest on that. So it is, we are, you see, destroying this country or Chittagong Hill Tracts altogether. Let me say you, village after village are now doing UPDF and JSS. And many a times you will see that, you see, Abdur Rahman is caught for, you see, ransacking some people's money. He is caught. And he goes to the, you see, court, and he is released next day. I don't know what else I have, but let me say you that Chittagong Hill Tracts issue, I also say that it is a political issue. I don't want to go, I don't want to compromise beyond that. So if it is a political issue, I want to go for the CST agreement, fulfillment of CST agreement. No, all people say it is a peace agreement. I never say it. It is a CST agreement of 1997. We have to there. Now you see, as I said that, what is happening in, also let me say one, you see, let me repeat what I said before. Government this year has given, even previous year, through CST ministry, 530 crores of taka for 3 hill districts and that board. As of now, I cannot make 3 hill district leaders and that board livelihood percentage has to be 40%. They don't agree on that. They say that making a canal is also livelihood, making a road also livelihood. I said that no. If you do so, I will send all your file to planning. Let them decide and stop all your project there. This is how it is going. So that's why I will say that we have to change the mentality of our leaders. So our leaders has to change that, whether they are for people's welfare or not. This is how I think about them. So leadership is very essential. It is crucial. If I get by name, okay, let me pronounce a name, though it is unpolite to say. The last Khagrasuri District Council Chairman, what is the capacity she has? Or even I will transfer the present one, what capacity she has? This one at least good, she listened to me. But neither Khagrasuri, no Khagrasuri. Bandhaban is good, he is good. But not Rangamati. Why he cannot take the 600 people appointment process of teachers? The ministry has given all sort of cooperation. Still, from Rangamati, Pallab and others know. They have sent me a long note signed by the 22 civil society groups. We seriously asked for the chairman go for appointment process of primary school teachers. Why he didn't do that? 600 people is not a joke in Chittagong now. At least every month they will get 15 crores of money. It is a good money circulation in the economy. And also similar things happen to Khagrasuri. And these chairmen, knowing or unknowingly, they sent a letter. Sometimes it contains political issues. And ministry doesn't show me always that, this sort of letters. So they want to decide, they think that it is an ordinary matter, but it has a political connotation. This happens to me as always. So, what you are saying about you see, Uttaran and all these things, when you see military got the 1 month magistracy power, journalist asked me, how you see this? I said, oh, it's very good, it's very well. Government is very kind, given 1 month magistracy power to military. I'm very happy. So why you are happy? I said, look, gentlemen, I have been under military magistracy since 1980s. So you should experience some military magistracy also. At least you feel at least you share our feelings. That's why I'm so happy that they got the magistracy power. I want to see that this magistracy power runs unlimitedly. You will take it negatively. But I seriously look for it negatively. I seriously believe that Chittagong Hill Tracts need good governance. But whenever we compare between Chittagong Hill Tracts and Bangladesh, I don't want to see equality. Because we went below equality. I need equity. I need seriously equity. Because there are many things, you see, what happened. If you put me also here, what you are saying much more valuable than me, because my capacity is lower than any of you here. So that's why I need equity. I can say or speak our present at certain limit, not above that. So here it is. You have to give us equity, or if possible, affirmative action you have to give us to develop Chittagong Hill Tracts. Chittagong Hill Tracts is so much vulnerable. Election coming, I said to cabinet that, you see, brothers, Chittagong Hill Tracts, each and every polling station is vulnerable. Put their body camera, put their CCTV, and also put the genuine people so that they can handle it. In the meantime, I already asked cabinet, you have to give in each and every polling station, not national, international monitors. My asking is too big, I know that. If I ask for, you see, come on, at least pistol to pabo. এই আশায় আমি এই জিনিসগুলি আমি তাদেরকে বলেছিলাম। বাট যেটা বলা হয়েছিল পল্লব যেটা বলতে চেয়েছিল যে আমরা কেন ইয়েতে করলাম, why we did our এই যে মিটিং of peace accord in Chittagong. Foreign Affairs advisor wanted to go to Khagrasuri because he never been to Khagrasuri. He said that I want to go to Khagrasuri and I want to hold the meeting there. But our leader, he said, I have a security problem there. I said, I will give you the army both front and back. If he doesn't go, then we have to find out the alternative arrangement. That's why we did it. This is alternative arrangement only. Don't think that so much outcome will come out of this. It is a process only. Land issue, let me say, land issue is difficult issue. Sarapa, it is the only Barrister Jyotirmoy Borua understand about community land. No others understand about the community land. That's why we want to prevail that 1900 Acts remain prevail. And to prevail it, it is, you see, every month I have to ask the Attorney General, that Pisau. It is a regular job now for me. And now this, our Chief Justice, he is very straight and blunt. In one day he dismissed 150 cases. Our number is about 158. I don't know where it is going on. Now, all you are saying about recognition, I want to see also recognition must be very required. But let's see that to get the having recognition and not having recognition, we need some other things. The other day I was talking to one of our colleagues here. He said that, Dada, this time I went to Hong Kong, I met about 600-700 hill girls there in Hong Kong. Can we make it a structural way? And it is not only Hong Kong. Our girls are now going to other countries, Japan and others. But sending there, we have some other jobs. We have to train them up. This is what I have been trying. Even I believe that among the 10 centers of Japanese language and caregiver, we'll be getting one in Rangamati. So every year at least we can send 30, you see, 30 people from that institute from Rangamati. She was ready to give me a, you see, center in Khagrasari, but we don't have a, you see, medical college. Not having a medical college, he cannot approve it. So it is here. I'm making too long now. I got a chance, please give me some more chance, because I will not be coming regularly to you. But after 3 weeks, I will be available, and I will say, you see, Biplobi Kotawata more than this. So, seriously, you see, we have to make this country together. Here, the hill people has to have the contribution to build up this nation. And the hill tracts itself is strategically also very important. It is very important. Let's see how it goes. Because there are a lot of rhetoric on Chittagong hill tracts. So we want to see that it doesn't come up, because it will make us so much vulnerable. We don't want to put ourselves vulnerable by the neighbors or by the international players. We want to remain peaceful. It is not happening. So, you see, try to see that, all of you, I will request you, this is a part and parcel of this country. We are ready to accommodate, you see, capital, money, skill development, everything in Chittagong hill tracts, in tourism, in any other skill work, we are ready to accept. But as I said, demographic engineering, doing so, please don't do it something called ecotourism development. It takes, you see, it should take only 2 acres, taking 2,000 acres. I'm not mentioning something like that. Although one of my close friends from Bonik Batta one day was saying to me, Dada, you don't know, তাদের প্রয়োজন ছিল হচ্ছে 6,000 একর, নিয়েছে 26,000 একর। বাংলায় বললাম আর কি। This is how it happens. Let me mention, you see, my very close friend Benjir Ahmed, আমার batchmate, তার ইয়েটা তো আমি দেখে এসেছি। Let me say the Ghazi group, তাদের জায়গা সব দেখে এসেছি বান্দরবনে। Let me say also তাজুল ইসলামের বউ 350 একর, Ghazi গ্রুপের unknown number, তারপরে বেনজিরের unknown number. All these things are happening in Chittagong Hill Tracts. Land grabbing is very easy. Even, what is the Samrat? What is the name of the Samrat? Who? Bir Bahadur and Samrat have...
এটাকে বলা হয় কেশিনো সম্রাট।
Kesino Samrat. They have good amount of land in Bandarban. So all these things, even not only that, let me mention another name here, Quantum. Do you know how big area they have? 1,000 acres? 10,000 acres they have lands. So why this happened? Well, all these things I am saying, sorry, I should not say all these things because I am in the government, but my liberty and my, you see, luxury was to release this post since day one of my advisorship. I seriously look for it to leave this you see, advisorship since day one. I cannot do it. But people know that I have been many a times say that why I am continuing. So I believe that the Rangavi case, Sarapa, I will ask my ministry, going back from here, I will ask for her. But again, it is something called Khagdasuri candidature for next general election. Same case, these are. We ourselves fighting. It is nobody else. Seriously believe that, or by our good friends here, sitting here, we in Chittagong Hill Tracts, we need two things only, quality education and livelihood development. If quality education and livelihood development be achieved, I seriously believe that we will overcome many things. Here we are lagging behind. Thank you very much for giving me a chance and hearing me.
Thank you, Honorable Advisor, Mr. Shupudeep Chakma. You have rightly mentioned two elements should be there for a better living standard, quality education and livelihood development. We are taking the notes of these things. Now we'll go for the closing remarks, and that will be delivered by the chair of this session, Dr. Fahmida Khatun, Executive Director of the CPD. And after that, when the live is ended, streaming is ended, we'll take the group photo. Yeah,
thank you. I wouldn't make another speech. I'll just thank everyone. I think we had a very constructive discussion during the last 2 hours or so. We are running overshooting by 10 minutes or so, but I think the free and candid discussions have given us to rethink and review, reflect on many issues which we have been pondering for many years. And thank you each and everyone who have shared your perspectives, which are very valuable, and I do hope that in the future the government of the day will take note of this and take the appropriate measures for the development of the Chittagong Hill Tracts. And once again, thanks to our partners, the Embassy of Denmark, Embassy of Sweden, and Norwegian Embassy in Dhaka, and Daily Star for being a media partner. And we have, you are all invited to a lunch here. So once again, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fahmida Khatun. I'd like to express our gratitude to all of you, including Ms. Lola Garcia Alex, who has joined us online, for your thoughtful contributions today. This discussion has highlighted both progress made and the challenges that remain in advancing indigenous rights in Chittagong Hill Tracts. The insights shared from community representatives, civil society will be invaluable in shaping practical steps forward, encouraging constructive engagement. The Daily Star will publish a brief news report tomorrow, and within next couple of weeks, a full-page supplement summarizing the key points and recommendations discussed will be published as well. These will be available in print, e-paper and online, accessible globally, and can be serve as the reference for policy advocacy with political leaders, and it will be also can be utilized for archival purpose. Once again, thank you for your time, perspective and engagement. Thank you all. We'll just sit here. Our photographer will take the photo. Maybe